When we talk about healthy ways of coping with stress, this is what most people think of. A healthy life is a stress-free life. We've all read the headlines that stress leads to hair loss, weight gain, depression, and, eventually, death. If stress is this terrible, we should avoid it, right? Well, stress isn't so simple, and we shouldn't treat it in such a simplistic way. Stress can lead to all the things I've just listed, but can also lead to a happier and healthier life. In fact, the negative aspects of stress don't come from stress itself. They come from our reactions to stress. Luckily, that's something that we can change. Maybe I haven't sold you on the idea that stress isn't inherently harmful. To convince you, think about the physical effects of stress. 1. Adrenaline and cortisol are released. 2. Our heart rate increases. And 3. We feel a surge of nervous energy. Now, compare this to the response of something like parachuting. Notice that the responses are identical. When we are stressed out, our bodies are experiencing the same things as if we were feeling exhilaration. Yeah, I was surprised to learn this too. And realizing this is the first step to having a healthier relationship with stress. The only difference between stress and excitement is context and how we think about it. This means that if we see stress in a better and more helpful light, then instead of stress stealing our hair and bringing us closer to death, we will receive all the health benefits as if we were doing something that excited us. Now, how do we change how we think about stress? Well, we already do it in some cases. I'm sure most of us have been in some group that has performed in front of an audience. For example, a sports team, or a band, or a choir, or, if you're anything like me, a play. Before I would perform, I would always feel something very similar to stress, except I didn't call it stress. I called it the pre-show jitters. The jitters would be at their worst the moment before I stepped onto stage, before I saw the audience and the audience saw me. In that moment, I would either try and push the jitters away and freeze, or I would take the energy it was giving me and use it to boost my confidence and step out on stage. The fact is, there is no difference between the pre-show jitters and stress. But because I think of the jitters as excitement and the stress as dread, my body reacts accordingly. To start developing a healthier relationship with stress, realize that stress is trying to help you by giving you energy and confidence to face whatever obstacles are to come. Even in situations where we think it's better to be calm and collected, it is still better to embrace stress than to fight against it. Something I have experienced, and I'm sure many of you will relate, is when I'm taking a test and I don't remember the answers, but I know I studied that material. When I am in this situation, I find myself starting to freak out, to rack my brain trying to figure out whatever it is I can't remember. Conventional wisdom is to calm down and think clearly, and that is what I usually try and do. However, this means that I am simultaneously trying to calm myself down and think of an answer to the question. Because I am trying to do both, I'm losing precious time, and I still usually fail to calm down. After realizing that stress is a tool I can use, I thought of a different approach to this problem. Instead of trying to calm down, I used the energy stress gave me to skip to the rest of the test and come back to the question when I was in a better state of mind. Not only was I more composed and more prepared when I came back to the question, but the jolt of energy stress gave me jump-started my brain, and I was able to finish the test much faster and with more focus and clarity. If you ever come across a situation when you think stress is a hindrance, think about how you can use the energy it gives you to overcome the situation rather than fight against the stress. However, there is another type of stress. The examples that I gave before, I like to call that situational stress, because that stress only lasts a while and is usually high energy panicking. But there is another one, and I like to call it dread. Dread is prolonged, and it can very easily lead to depression. We can dread things like a class or work that we don't like going to, or dread something like not finding love. Dread often leads to procrastination, and then, as the deadline approaches, that dread turns into panic, which is situational stress. Fairly early in the year, I started experiencing dread because there was one class I absolutely hated going to: German. Worse still, I had German 4 times a week, so I felt this dread nearly every single day. Luckily, I learned strategies to help me cope with dread, boiling down to I needed to change my perspective about the class. I started by choosing 3 values that had a lot of meaning to me: truth, compassion, and diversity. After I had chosen my values, I started to see how the class connected me to my values and strengthened them. Once I realized that German was helping me develop my value of diversity, it made going to class a lot easier. I didn't immediately start loving the class, but through my values, I gained the resilience I needed to do the work and keep myself in good standing. The best part was, after I had done this, I was able to apply my values to everything I was dreading doing, like finishing a project or taking the next step in a relationship. It also helped me improve my mood and become generally happier, as shown by the mood tracking app I use. If you are looking to help change your perception, a good way I found was to write about it. Over a 2-week period, I would write about a major stressor I experienced that day, and then I would write about how that stressor connected to one of my values. After doing that for 2 weeks, it became second nature for me to see a stressor and then relate it to my values. I learned this strategy, as well as everything else I've talked about, from the book The Upside of Stress by Kelly McGonigal. I would highly suggest that everyone read this book, as it goes into even greater detail about the science behind stress and the strategies to help cope with it. I hope you all have a great day and that you stay stressed.